Don't look back, just run!
I'm with you!
Almost there, keep going!
I see it!
A man in a worn jacket dived across the busy intersection, pushing Alexandra Reeves out of the path of a speeding car that had run a red light. His body took the impact instead, rolling across the hood before tumbling to the pavement. As gasps filled the courtroom, the video showed him limping away from the scene before paramedics arrived, disappearing into the crowd without leaving his name. This wasn't just another hit-and-run trial. It was the beginning of a search that would change 2 lives forever. If you're enjoying this incredible true-to-life story, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful human stories that remind us of the extraordinary connections that shape our lives. Alexandra Reeves had everything society deemed valuable: a corner office in Manhattan's most prestigious skyscraper, a portfolio worth millions, and the title of youngest female CEO of a Fortune 500 company. But none of it mattered on that rainy Tuesday when death came hurtling toward her at 40 miles per hour. Now, 3 months after the accident, she sat in her expansive penthouse apartment staring at the same security footage, pausing on the blurry image of the man's face, the stranger who had saved her life and then disappeared like a ghost. "We've exhausted all leads, Ms. Reeves," said David, her head of security. No hospital admissions matching his description. No responses to the reward offer. It's like he doesn't want to be found. Alexandra's manicured fingers drummed against the glass coffee table. "Everyone can be found, David. Everyone." Something in her voice made it clear the conversation wasn't over. Alexandra Reeves hadn't built an empire by accepting defeat. Double the reward. Contact every shelter, every clinic that doesn't require ID. Someone must know something. What Alexandra didn't know, couldn't know, was that 30 miles away in a modest apartment in Queens, Michael Donovan was helping his daughter with her science project. At 42, his hair had started graying at the temples, and the limp from the accident still troubled him when it rained. The bruises had faded, but the 3 broken ribs had made working construction jobs impossible for weeks. Bills had piled up, and tonight he'd have to tell 10-year-old Lily that they might need to move again. "Dad, look! I made the volcano erupt." Lily's eyes sparkled with the simple joy of childhood, unaware of the eviction notice tucked in her father's pocket. Michael's smile never wavered. Since losing his wife to cancer 4 years ago, he'd become an expert at shielding Lily from life's harsher realities. "That's amazing, sweetheart. You're going to ace this presentation." He ruffled her hair, wincing slightly as the movement pulled at his still-healing ribs. The television played softly in the background, another news segment about Alexandra Reeves increasing the reward for information about her mystery savior. Michael glanced at the screen, then quickly turned it off. "Time for bed, Lilybug. Big day tomorrow." After tucking his daughter in, Michael sat at their small kitchen table with bills spread before him. The medical expenses had devastated their already fragile finances. Construction work had been his lifeline after Sarah died, but now even that was uncertain. He pulled out a worn photograph, Lily as a toddler, perched on Sarah's lap, both laughing. "What would you do, Sarah?" he whispered to the empty room. The answer came not from the photograph, but from a memory. Sarah, in her hospital bed, making him promise, "Don't ever let her feel like a charity case. We've got our pride, Michael Donovan." That's why he'd walked away from the accident. That's why he hadn't stayed for the ambulances, the questions, the inevitable media circus that would follow when people learned Alexandra Reeves had nearly died. He couldn't risk becoming a footnote in someone else's story. Struggling single dad saves billionaire, couldn't bear the thought of Lily seeing them portrayed as objects of pity. The next morning, Alexandra sat in her executive meeting, only half listening to quarterly projections. Her assistant slipped her a note, possible lead on the Good Samaritan. Construction worker. Queens. Alexandra's heart raced as she abruptly stood, startling her board members mid-presentation. "Continue without me," she said, already heading for the door. Her COO raised an eyebrow, Alexandra Reeves leaving during a major financial review was unprecedented. But nearly dying had a way of rearranging priorities. Meanwhile, Michael stood in the school principal's office, his face flushed with embarrassment. "Mr. Donovan, Lily's tuition is now 2 months overdue." Principal Sharma's voice was sympathetic but firm. "We've been as flexible as possible, but—" "I understand," Michael interrupted. "We'll be out by the end of the week." The scholarship that had given Lily access to this school, so much better than their district's underfunded public option, had been contingent on Michael's ability to cover partial tuition. As he left the building, Michael's phone rang, a foreman offering a day's work at a site in Manhattan. Not enough to save their apartment, but enough to buy groceries for the week. He accepted immediately, despite the pain still radiating through his side. Alexandra's driver navigated through Queens, following the lead her investigator had provided. A construction worker with a recent injury, matching the description, had been seen at St. Vincent's Free Clinic. It wasn't much, but it was the most concrete lead in months of searching. "Ms. Reeves, we have another problem," her assistant said through the car's speakerphone. "The Palmer merger documents need your signature today, and the board is getting restless about your sudden departure." "They'll survive," Alexandra replied, gazing out at the unfamiliar neighborhood, so different from her Manhattan world. "Some things are more important." The clinic provided no additional information, patient confidentiality, but Alexandra's determined questioning of staff in the waiting room yielded another thread. A man fitting the description had mentioned working construction sites in Midtown. By midday, Michael was perched 40 stories above Manhattan, securing steel beams despite the throbbing pain in his side. Each movement was agony, but he worked steadily, focused on the paycheck that would come at day's end. Below, Alexandra moved from one construction site to another, showing the grainy photo, offering rewards for information. Each negative response only strengthened her resolve. The afternoon sun was setting when a foreman at her fifth site recognized the photo. "Yeah, that's Mike Donovan. Good worker. Been with us off and on for years. Had some kind of accident a few months back, but he's on site today." The foreman pointed upward. "Probably wrapping up now." Alexandra's heart pounded as she looked up at the skeletal framework of the rising building, her building, she realized with a start. The new Reeves Tech headquarters that she had approved but never visited. Somewhere up there was the man who had saved her life. As workers descended at the end of their shift, Alexandra scrutinized each face. Then she saw him, limping slightly, looking more weathered than in the video but unmistakable. The same man who had pushed her from death's path without hesitation. "Michael Donovan," she called out, moving toward him. Michael froze, recognition and wariness crossing his face in equal measure. For a moment, neither spoke. "You've been looking for me," he finally said. "Not a question." "For 3 months," Alexandra confirmed, suddenly uncertain now that she'd found him. The rehearsed speech of gratitude seemed inadequate in the face of his obvious discomfort. "I need to get home to my daughter," Michael said, already turning away. "Please. Just 5 minutes." There was something in her voice, not the polished authority of a CEO, but the raw honesty of a human being confronting her own mortality. "I owe you my life." Those 5 minutes stretched into an hour at a coffee shop around the corner. Michael reluctantly shared the basics: single father, widower, struggling to make ends meet since the accident. Alexandra listened, struck by how completely their lives diverged despite living in the same city. "Let me help you," she finally said. "A job at my company, medical expenses, your daughter's education." Michael's expression hardened. "That's not why I did it. And it's not why I disappeared afterward." "Then why did you?" The question that had haunted her for months. Michael was quiet for a long moment. "Because some things should just be human. No rewards, no media, no charity. Just one person helping another because it's the right thing to do." He stood, leaving his coffee untouched. I'm glad you're okay, Ms. Reeves. But we should leave it at that. Alexandra watched him walk away, understanding for the first time what her wealth and position sometimes cost her, the simple dignity of human connection without obligation or expectation. That night, Michael returned to their apartment to find an eviction notice on the door. Final warning. As he prepared a simple dinner, he tried to formulate the words to tell Lily they would need to move to a shelter until he could save enough for another place. But Lily had news of her own. Dad. My teacher says I've been recommended for the city science competition. If I win, it comes with a full scholarship to Preston Academy. Her excitement made the small apartment seem bright despite the shadows gathering. Michael pulled his daughter into a careful hug, mindful of his ribs. That's amazing, Lilybug. I always knew you were brilliant. Across town, Alexandra sat in her penthouse, Michael's words echoing. For the first time in years, she skipped her evening meeting, instead researching something that had nothing to do with quarterly profits or market shares. By midnight, she had a plan, one that respected Michael's pride while still allowing her to express her gratitude. The next morning, a letter arrived at Michael's apartment building. Inside was a job offer, not from Reeves Tech, but from a construction company that had recently won the contract for the Reeves headquarters. The position was senior foreman, with salary and benefits that would solve their immediate financial crisis. No mention of Alexandra Reeves, no charity, just an opportunity based on Michael's years of experience. Separately, Lily's school received an anonymous donation establishing a STEM scholarship fund, with the first award going to a promising young scientist with demonstrated need. No conditions, no publicity, just an opportunity. Michael recognized the subtle hand behind these developments, but the opportunities were genuine, based on merit rather than pity. After much consideration, he accepted the foreman position. 6 months later, Alexandra attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the completed structural phase of her new headquarters. As executives and journalists gathered for the photo opportunity, she spotted Michael among the construction team, his posture straight, the limp barely noticeable now. Their eyes met briefly across the crowd. A small nod from each, acknowledgement, respect, but no further intrusion into each other's worlds. That might have been the end of the story. Two lives that intersected for a moment of crisis, then continued on their separate trajectories. But life has a way of creating unexpected connections. 3 weeks later, Alexandra found herself judging the city science competition, a commitment she had made months earlier as part of Reeves Tech's community outreach. Among the brilliant young minds presenting their projects was a familiar face, Michael Donovan, whose volcano had evolved into a sophisticated project on renewable energy applications. When Lily won first place, Alexandra presented the award without revealing any connection to Michael. But as the ceremony concluded, Michael approached her, Lily chattering excitedly by his side. "Ms. Reeves, my daughter has something she'd like to ask you," he said formally, but with a warmth that hadn't been present during their coffee shop conversation. Lily looked up at Alexandra with the fearless curiosity of childhood. "Ms. Reeves, my project is about making clean energy accessible in low-income neighborhoods. Dad says you build things that change how people live. Would you tell me how you decided what to build?" The simple question, asked without awareness of wealth disparities or social barriers, opened a conversation that continued through the reception and beyond. Alexandra found herself explaining complex business concepts to an attentive 10-year-old, while Michael watched with quiet pride. "She's remarkable," Alexandra told Michael as Lily spoke with other competition judges. "She gets her brains from her mother," Michael said, his voice softening with memory. "Sarah was a science teacher before she got sick." That brief exchange led to coffee, then to occasional meetings where Alexandra provided mentorship to Lily while carefully respecting the boundaries Michael had established. No charity, no public story about their connection, just humans connecting over shared values. Months passed. Lily's scholarship to Preston Academy began. Michael's position as foreman brought stability they hadn't known since Sarah's illness. Alexandra's company launched a new initiative focused on bringing technology resources to underserved schools, inspired, though few would ever know it, by conversations with a curious 10-year-old. 1 year to the day after the accident, Alexandra received a handwritten invitation to dinner at the Donovans' apartment. Their circumstances had improved, a better apartment, though still modest by Manhattan standards, but the invitation itself represented something significant. Michael was finally opening his door, not just to the woman whose life he had saved, but to the possibility of connection. That dinner marked a turning point. The careful distance maintained for months gave way to genuine friendship. Lily's school projects often became topics of spirited debate at Alexandra's executive table. Michael's practical knowledge of building and materials informed Reeves' text development processes. Alexandra found herself spending weekends in Queens rather than at charity galas, discovering a kind of authentic human connection that had been missing from her high-powered life. News outlets eventually discovered the connection between Alexandra Reeves and the Donovans. Headlines speculated about romantic involvement between the CEO and the construction foreman, about calculated PR moves, about class differences. Neither Michael nor Alexandra dignified the speculation with responses. The truth was both simpler and more profound than tabloid speculation. A moment of pure human instinct, a man diving to save a stranger without thought of consequence, had created a ripple effect, changing not just two lives but expanding outward. Alexandra's company launched initiatives that brought technology education to thousands of children like Lily. Michael's experience informed workplace safety improvements that protected countless construction workers. 3 years after the accident, Lily stood on a stage accepting a National Youth Science Award. In the audience, Alexandra and Michael watched with shared pride, not as CEO and employee, not as savior and saved, but as two people who had discovered that sometimes the most important connections arise from the most unexpected circumstances. As Lily concluded her acceptance speech, she added words that hadn't been in her practiced version, "And I want to thank my dad, who taught me that doing the right thing matters more than recognition, and Ms. Reeves, who showed me that success isn't measured by what you have, but by the lives you touch." From opposite ends of the social spectrum, through crisis and recovery, pride and gratitude, two people had found their way to a truth that transcended their differences, that genuine human connection, free from obligation or expectation, might be the most valuable thing of all. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We bring you powerful stories of human connection every week that remind us all of what truly matters in life. Share in the comments below about a time when an unexpected encounter changed your own path, because sometimes the most meaningful connections begin with a single moment of courage.